You started your business to build something great, but now you find yourself the chief of everything. Juggling all the balls is holding you back. I'm Catherine Brown, and this is the podcast for founders ready to trade the all-the-hat hustle for high-impact growth. We've invited top subject matter experts across all business areas to come share what they believe founders need to know. Start using the levers that actually move the needle. Welcome to Chief of Everything. Welcome to Chief of Everything, and I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation that I had with my friend, Sarah Sears. She is the founder and principal of S Design, which is a branding agency based in Oklahoma City. She has served clients internationally. We were just discussing before we did this interview about all of her travel last year with different certifications and conferences. And I have actually known Sarah for over 20 years. And so it's such a joy to have her be the person that's going to talk with our audience about the concepts in branding. What do small business owners and micro businesses need to understand earlier about branding? And what are the stakes when we don't get it right? Sarah, welcome to Chief of Everything. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine. It's always a joy to hang out with you.
Since I've known you for 20 years, I'm going to put on my readers to read my next question. But we are starting out this series with people who are subject matter experts in all of the areas that founders have to manage on their own until they grow to a point at which they can hire a firm like yourself or an internal employee. And we want all of our subject matter experts to start with this same question, because I think that there's so many things about running businesses that are counterintuitive or a paradigm shift from what we might think. And so when it comes to branding, what principle feels wrong to the founder, but is actually the secret to their growth?
For small businesses, a lot of what you're doing when you get started is just figuring out how your business is going to be. You may think that you know exactly what business you're starting and what you're going to do, but usually when you're a founder, you might even, do a business plan online or something like that. But really, that's what I think people need to spend time doing. Really learning about your business, learning about the competitive nature of your business, who's in there. I mean, what we know is, when you start a business that everybody else is doing, like you got to figure out what's different about who you are.
Right.
And that takes a while. And you also have to be doing something that people actually need or want, which sometimes we think that people are going to need and want what we have to sell, and they don't. So you got to figure out who those people are, what their actual needs are, what their behaviors are. And what I see a lot is people thinking, oh, I'm going to start this business and I'm going to make it like me. I'm going to choose all the things that I like. And what we know is that you really need to be designing for your customer, right? And you need to be you need to document what the purpose is of your business besides making money, what it's going to do, what your mission is. You need to figure out what your values are, how you're going to do it different than someone else, and why somebody would even care about that. And that's where you need to spend your time. But a lot of times people just kind of think, oh, I just need to get started. I need to make money, or I need to do this. But really spending time, even if you're just spending a specific amount of time every day working on that stuff, by the time you hire someone to help you with your brand and your brand strategy, that's all the information they're going to ask you about. They need to know to do it well, because otherwise you're just creating something that's a generalist thing that's going to look like everybody else. It's not going to be differentiated, right?
So I heard you say a couple things that jump out to me with my experience as a professional sales trainer. I completely agree that we get started, we do the best we can, but we don't actually know really why our buyer thinks we're different than other people until we practice some. And so I think that iterative learning is part of what founders are impatient about, and they don't understand it's totally normal. I've started several companies, and because I've started several companies, every time I think I can shortchange this process and that somehow I'm going to figure this out faster, and it's always a couple years. It's at least a couple years, sometimes longer. And making that normal and having people understand that that's normal, I think is really useful. So I really love that first point. My question about the brand strategy is, given the fact that this is evolving, I'm doing my best. I'm trying to figure out my value proposition. I'm trying to solidify my values and differentiate them from competitors. What do I do about a brand strategy? I mean, what does a brand strategy mean when you're in that evolving time?
Well, your brand strategy is really differentiation. Do I even have a place for my business? Because if I don't, then why am I even doing this? Right. It can be differentiation in terms of, am I solving the problem different? Is
Mm,
it multiple things that no one's ever put together before? Like, what makes it different? And then you've got to align that with what your customer is looking for. And
mm,
are they going to quit doing what they're doing with someone else in order to hire you to do it? Will they buy that from you? What is the value of that for them?
okay.
Pricing strategy. I mean, it's holistic. It's part of sales, right? It's not
Mm.
separate from sales. It's not just marketing. It's how in the future you're going to attract employees, right?
So, brand strategy is part of selling. It ties into marketing. We're talking about something bigger, more holistic. Therefore, it can be considered earlier. My experience working with early stage businesses and small businesses is that many people still think of branding as their visual assets only.
Okay, so here's a distinction. Brand is the perception that your customer or stakeholders have about you. Okay. So you're going to put out branding materials and things like that to say, here's who we are. But then the experiences that they have with you is going to form who they think you are. You can't totally control that. And they're going to bring a lot of themselves to that mix. But that's why brands attract a certain type of person. If you think about a brand like Apple, they're attracting a certain type of person. So they have chosen values and behaviors and things like that that are very specific to the customer that they want to attract. And I am a huge fan, and that's what I'm going to spend my money on because I think about who does that make me when I support that brand?
When I use Apple products, is a definition
A
of who I am.
reflection of me.
Mhm,
Yes.
mhm,
So
mhm,
that is why it's so important to know who you are as a business because everything that you're expressing and every system you set up and every experience that people are going to have, whether it's HR, right? Because when you hire people,
mm.
they think that they're working for a company that's a certain way. So all of their experiences as an employee need to reflect that because what do they turn around and do? They go home and they get online and they talk about the company, right? And if I hear that someone hates working in a company because of X, Y, and Z, and I thought, oh, I thought I liked that brand because of my experience, but I don't want to support a brand that doesn't treat their employees well. Right. So it's
Right.
not disconnected. It's kind of a core. It should be like, if you think of two parts of a DNA strand, one part is your business strategy and one part is your brand strategy. They need to be lining up all along that DNA strand. And then when you express yourself, and this is kind of a fun thing, but like sometimes I tell people, if you think about a brand like your mom, right? There's lots of different moms. Every mom has a way of acting and a way of doing things. She's going to have certain ways that she talks, the ways that she dresses and mannerisms, right? So you want to create something like that for your company, which is always showing up consistently. You
Mm.
know, like you just know how your mom is going to show up and how she's going to do things. So you want that same type of identity. And that's why we call it brand identity, right? What is the voice and tone? You need all those rules about expression, and so that people can embody this is how we do it here. And it can be like a visual identity. And of course, you've got to get all your trademarks and things like that done. But it's really about here's how we do things here.
So, where do you see that founders waste money? Where do some of the accidentally foolish decisions lie early on that you could steer them a different direction?
Well, I think about the work that I started out doing very early on in my career was all for nonprofits. And I knew that when they hired me to do something, they only had a very limited amount of funds and that had to last them for a really long time. And so the way that we started thinking about that was how can we make this a system for them? How can we create a holistic system for them so that they don't have to come back to us? Because we knew that they would just break into tears if they had to ask for another $50, right? They just didn't have it.
Right.
So I think so where I see that mistake is that people spend so much time and energy not getting the system in place, not getting that kind of early work done. Even if it's, let's say that you don't have money to invest in a brand strategy, pick the colors, don't make them the same colors as your, now we can use ChatGPT. So you could probably do a little research and figure out what colors, you should choose from. But you want to get something in place that's consistent so that every time that you're putting out something or doing something, you're not wasting time and energy. I think we forget how much time and energy is wasted every day, especially when you start adding people to your team, thinking about like, we have to send out an email. What does it say? What tone does it say? What do our customers care about? Like, if you have all of that work done up front, then it's, you don't have to think about what it's going to look like.
Mhm.
You have a template. You
Mhm.
know, it needs to be written in this tone. So now you just have to figure out like, what are the three things we're trying to say and then just let it go. But that compounding amount of wasteful time, kind of rethinking how to show up every day, I think people don't realize how much time is wasted doing that. And once they have all that in place, they just think, oh my goodness, I've wasted so much time and money not having this easy to get to. I mean, we all know how it is. Someone says, send over your JPEG of your logo, right?
Right.
You're building something.
You can't find it.
Thing. Yeah. Or changing it to fit into a space that it wasn't designed for when, then you end up with 500 different versions of that instead of four, that you just always use. So it just creates a lot of unnecessary chaos. And
I think, Sarah, too, depending on someone's entrepreneur journey and what they did before they started their own business, there's some backgrounds that people can have coming out of corporate that maybe feel like branding is more or less intimidating. Like for some, it's not even a ping on their radar because they just don't have the language for it. And
right.
others might have had some experience in corporate and they're going to be better at some of these early decisions than others because of that background. One of the things that you and I have talked about in other settings is this idea of trusting yourself and
Mm,
the fact that people do have some intuition about branding and about how they should come across. Would you speak about that a little bit more?
sure. I think the work that you do to write things down about how you want to show up and your value system and things like that is very important because I think what we notice when we're working and we're going through experiences, whether you're attending a conference and talking about your business, you can tell when things don't go right, right? I mean, just like every day, there's like a nagging feeling like that didn't feel right. That didn't feel aligned. Sometimes I use the phrase that felt out of integrity. Like it didn't feel like the way that I was supposed to show up. But those things are all, that's a brand misalignment. That's a disconnect,
Mm.
right? And it's kind of like if you think about hiring an employee for your company, if if you have all of that written down, then you're hiring for the traits that you want them to have already. Like there's some things you cannot train for. Like, you don't want to hire someone that has a completely different value system
Not to lie or whatever.
because
Yeah.
they're not going to show up. And then every time they do it, you're going to say, well, that didn't feel right. But maybe if they don't have that in them to show up that way, that's going to be very forced and they're never going to really be able to do it in that way. And again, it depends on what role they're playing in your business, whether they're behind the scenes or in front of the scenes. But again, most businesses have a culture, and a culture is just the behavior that's associated with the brand. It's an expression of the brand. So,
Hmm. Sarah, I'm listening to these suggestions that we've covered, which I think have been awesome. And I remember the early years overwhelm. Right? We're calling this podcast Chief of Everything because you have so many things that still fall to you. And so, where I'd like to bring us toward the end here is what are those things that we want our founders to take away and remember and be encouraged by? I'm going to get us started on the list and then I'm going to hand it over to you. And I'm gleaning from what you've said.
okay.
Number one, the evolution is completely normal. You cannot bypass it. You cannot shortchange it. If you do, you'll be sorry. The experiences of standing and talking to someone at a trade show and feeling like it didn't land right, and your gut is telling you that didn't go well, that's normal. That's
Yeah.
actually excellent to have that happen. You want to invite those opportunities as early as possible because your message will evolve as you figure out exactly who you're going to serve. And you might change over time who you're going to serve, but your values aren't going to change. And so know that that's normal. That experience is normal. That's one thing that's coming to me as we're talking. What would you like to add to that?
Yes. I would say your purpose is going to last forever. Okay. And then your values are going to be anchored to your purpose. And then your mission and your goals are going to evolve over time.
Mm,
So it's always changing. And it's not just you that's changing, it's the world that's changing, right? Our
right.
technology is changing, people's behavior is changing. So you have to evolve. And I do think that if you think about it, there's something called design thinking and it's very iterative, right? And so this is how you think about it, but you're constantly gathering research. Okay. So it's totally normal. It's totally normal and it's best practice to gather that research, reflect on it, and then incorporate it, right? It's that continuous improvement. And just, it's the process and you can enjoy it. It doesn't have to be stressful. It's just like, oh, this is information for me. And I would say what I do is I keep a little, because I'm still evolving, right? And the world is still changing. And I started out being a visual designer. And then, as my company grew and I deepened and I understood my customers, I understood that the research that we do to do a visual design would be useful for clients, you know, in all other aspects of their business and tying it to their strategy. So, and that
Mm.
has evolved as a practice in the 30 years that I've been working as well. So you just continue to do better and learn from that. And I would say, just be aware, have a little place where you take notes, book some time, either monthly or weekly on your calendar to go and reflect on those notes. And just ask yourself, do I have what I need to make this better now and prioritize it? And which one of these things will impact my business the most? And prioritize them accordingly and just continue to improve. So,
I love that so much, Sarah, because it ties back to a strategy that I was taught even last month. I attended a planning session that had people, the facilitator had all of the entrepreneurs on the call schedule once a month where they gave themselves an entire afternoon to think, to reflect on what they'd learned, and to decide what they wanted to modify about the goals they previously set because of the information that they'd received. And
yeah.
I just had my first session that came up last week. And when it popped up, I thought, literally, what is this? Because it was my first one that came up. And then I thought, that's working on your business and not just in your business. And I was so delighted that that had come to me as a suggestion. So that's a little bonus takeaway for our listeners is that if you do what Sarah's saying and you actually reflect and schedule time for this reflection, you'll be so glad.
Yes. And I'll just continue to get better. And it'll impact areas of your business that you didn't expect at all.
Thanks, Sarah, so much. So where can people go when they want to learn more about you?
Oh, well, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also go to my website, which is sdesigninc.com.
sdesigninc.com. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Catherine.
Didn't you love Sarah? I always learn something when I spend time with her. I was reminded of the definition of brand, that your brand is the perception that your customers and really everyone else that works with you has about you. So brand strategy touches everything. That was really helpful to me. Thanks, Sarah, so much. Thank you for joining Chief of Everything podcast. Be sure to subscribe and give me some feedback. And if you enjoyed this, share it with a friend. We're here to help founders stop being chief of everything eventually.